Hi, welcome everyone. We will start in about a minute, just giving some time for people to join.
It jumped up quick.
Yeah, still connecting. If you're still connecting. We have a lot of attendees from all parts of the world for this webinar.
See a few names I know.
Yeah. Okay, one more minute and we'll start. All right, I think let's begin. People are still joining, but there are already a lot of us here, and welcome again, everyone, to this webinar. We have a lot of people joining from Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Singapore, Asia. Welcome, everyone. My name is Oksana. I'm heading marketing for APAC region. For today's webinar, I'm happy to introduce our speaker, Jason Howden, Revizto Chief Innovation Officer. As Revizto CIO, Jason brings expert knowledge in digital technologies for the built environment to our team. Jason has been at the vanguard of the field for over 25 years and has consulted on some of the largest public service facilities in New Zealand, Australia, United Kingdom, including hospitals, laboratories, prisons, airports, with projects values ranging from 100 million to over 2 billion. His lifelong immersion in the construction industry has enabled him to spearhead the development, promotion, and education of emerging technologies around the world. As CIO for Revizto, Jason is looking forward to working with you to automate your workflows, de-risking your projects from design and construction coordination errors, often causing costly delays. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. The webinar will go for about an hour. We will leave time at the end for the Q&A. Please leave your questions in the Q&A box that should appear on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We are recording this webinar, so you will receive, and everybody who registered, the recording and some materials Jason will be talking about in the couple of days after the webinar. And I think that's it from me. Thank you. And Jason, over to you.
Thank you, Oksana. Welcome, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening, dialing in from Sydney, Australia, to everyone around the world. And thank you again for, if you're getting up early in the morning to visit us online, or if you're staying back in the office late, thank you. So I've designed the webinar to be more of a presentation session in the first instance. I have a live demo model that I can pull up as part of the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I'll roughly talk for about 30-35 minutes, so that should allow enough time to have a deep dive if someone wants to have a deep dive into some of the detailed workflows that we'll be discussing as part of this codifying of coordination. It's really exciting to be sharing this with you, and it kind of builds on a bunch of my experience from the built environment in my previous roles, working with architects and contractors around the world. So the first thing that we need to do when we're setting up a structure to automate things in Revizto, or actually automate anything in the digital environment, is make sure you lay some good foundations. And when we're talking about laying foundations for coordination, the key kind of foundations that we want to be thinking about and laying is getting your project program aligned so you can actually carry out meaningful coordination. I've worked on many projects where project programs have changed, they've ebbed and flowed as the design or construction has evolved. And in some of those situations, you can find that the model development falls out of sync with project deliverables and deadlines and milestones. So it's really critical that you have a good, solid project program and everybody knows what they're modeling, to what LOD, what kind of information might need to be included in the model, and when they're needing to deliver that. And then you can build on top of that project program. Building on top of that project program, it really starts at the top level. And because we're talking about coordination in this webinar, and I'm going to talk a lot about models, zones, elements, and clash tolerances. So the models you can think of as the fundamental kind of building blocks of your coordination. Having a good solid model structure, not too many individual model files, and not too many large data sets. It really is important to automate your workflows. If you have too many model files, you might find that you're spending too much time interchanging model files and not enough time coordinating them. Having too much in one model, you might find that you're spending too much time uploading and downloading. So it's really important that you find a balance with your model structures when you're wanting to automate them. I typically align model structures around building design or construction disciplines. As you go into construction, it's worthwhile thinking about aligning model structures to programs of work. There might be early works models that need to develop at a faster pace, and therefore the coordination on those models needs to happen earlier. So it's important to think about these things and allow for it in your BIM execution plans, so you've got a fundamental foundation you can build upon. Something unique to Revizto is our new zones technology. And the zones technology allow you to divide base model files further, adding a level of detail without necessarily needing to segregate model files into separate digital elements that need to be shared. For me, and when I was in the industry on the user side of Revizto, this was a fundamental game changer. It meant that we could structure models in larger chunks without them being too heavy, but also have the flexibility and the level of detail to isolate coordination issues that might be, say, in a ceiling or in a plant room, and focus in on those without necessarily needing to make additional models. Levels is technology that comes part and parcel with Revizto, has been there from the beginning, and combining zones with levels is very powerful. The next kind of bit is really to think about how you can separate the individual components within a large building or infrastructure project. A lot of the projects I've worked on have had thousands, tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of individual model elements. And being able to group them in a meaningful format allows you to sort and collate and make meaningful decisions on insights that are related to design programs, construction programs, tapping into elemental properties, particularly in the building services trades, things like return air ductwork, say, for example, or hydraulics. But even within the hydraulics discipline, there is drainage, there is vent pipes, separating those out so you can grade and classify your coordination issues more appropriately, depending on the specific nuances of a model element or its built counterpart in real life. A good example there would be hydraulic drainage. Hydraulic drainage often requires gravity unless it's pumped to get whatever it's carrying out of a building. So having that at a higher priority over something that is under pressure, like cold water or hot water, allows you to coordinate those things ahead of other things that might be able to be flexed on site. And then the final thing to think about is how are you going to clash, or what kind of clash tolerances might you use as part of your coordination strategy? For the last 10 years, I've been doing a lot of work in New Zealand. New Zealand is a very active seismic region, and a lot of the challenges that we had in New Zealand was actually allowing for enough space between objects. So when the building starts to move, or more importantly, when the land starts to move, the building and the components inside the building have enough clearance between them to move without knocking each other out of the building. So it's really important to think about your clash tolerances or the clash types that you might be using. In the Revizto platform, we have some really neat features there where we can do hard clash, clearance clash. We can even check spatial distances so far away from a certain object, clear room above this object, adjacent this object. It's very powerful and flexible in that space. So thinking about that, how would we go about creating a framework to scale the coordination process? I've done a lot of thinking about this over the years, done a lot of testing and teasing and tweaking a framework for coordination. As new technologies have emerged, I've always taken it as an opportunity to rethink what I've always done and to revisit it for a more efficient outcome. So one of the things that I think is useful in this space is coming up with a syntax for naming or classifying your clash tests within the Revizto environment. I often think that if you can capture the importance level of each clash test, that allows you to align it to project programs. Some things might need to be executed earlier in the design or the construction process. And then having an easy identifier between what two objects are being clashed or tested against each other is useful as well. Selection A and selection B, that's a common terminology between all clash detection softwares that I've seen over the years. You have object A is clashing with object B. And then there's some other metadata that is worthwhile thinking about and capturing. It doesn't necessarily have to be captured within the clash test ID itself. It could be though. I find that keeping things simple is also useful. It helps with legibility and readability. But the issue metadata that could go along with the ID, I guess, would be clash priority, clash responsibility, and then again, the clash tolerance, whether it's a hard clash or a clearance clash. So a recap on what a hard clash and a clearance clash is, for those that may not know what I'm talking about. A hard clash is often referred to as one object overlaying another object. So they're hard in terms of what they clash over with each other. That can also have a tolerance. You might want to allow for 50 millimeters of overlap, 20 millimeters of overlap, but in the real world, no objects can overlap. So that's where a clearance clash can be also useful. And you might have a minimum clearance that you need to achieve, such as the conditions in New Zealand with the seismic tolerances and clearances that are required under the building code there. Capturing all of that information, well, everybody has a clash matrix, and I've seen many over the years. This is something that we've been working on internally, kind of capturing that clash importance, clash priority, whether it's a critical, major, or minor, the clash responsibility, who's going to solve it or not solve it, and the clash tolerances, whether it's a hard clearance or self-intersect. So with all of that framework in place, how can we make the machine do all of the work for us? We've all got busy days. There's a lot to think about in creating a modern building these days, from climate change to low carbon to building code compliance. Again, I'm going to reiterate the seismic conditions in New Zealand is dear to my heart because it's the thing that I've been working on the most recently. There's a lot to think about. So how can we kind of leverage the machines to do the work that needs to be done in coordinating and developing models without necessarily distracting us from really important, bigger macro decisions that need to be made? So if we go back to that initial framework around program, model structure, elemental properties and search sets, I'm going to walk you through how you can create a digital I guess, framework to allow you to scale coordination across multiple projects with ease. So the first thing to kind of think about is your model structure. I like the idea of bringing all the models into a federated model. There's a lot of terminology and a lot of use of a federated model in the BIM world these days. It goes hand in glove with common data environments. In ANZ and also in the UK and North America, BIM 360 from Autodesk is an environment that is used a lot with Revit, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is Revit centric. That's my experience, my background, but it can equally be applied to IFC workflows as well, and substituting things like category names for I guess descriptors and components that relate to the IFC world. If everybody is able to store their models in a common data environment, or if everybody is contracted to do that, it seems to make sense to leverage that information. And by pulling that information into a federated model, it gives us a single point of reference to then upload to Revizto. And it kind of removes all of those bottlenecks of who shared what, when did they share it, how are we sharing it, did they share it in time? Something that you can do, though, within the federated model, particularly with the workflows that I'm presenting tonight, is you can add and embellish the design models or the construction models with a BIM management overlay without necessarily needing to lay the burden on the original model authors. There's something that might fall into that scope, might be creating 3D grid lines. It might be creating the zones that you're going to use for your coordination purposes. It might also just be able to facilitate and leverage our automation engine within Revizto to schedule the uploads and publishing to Revizto nightly. So everybody's got up-to-date information every morning, which is very useful. A key to thinking about how you structure your model is think about where the bottlenecks might lie. Within the BIM 360 environment, out of the box, people like to set it up with a publish, share, and consume methodology, so you can track who got what and when they got it. But that relies on somebody to make sure that they do publish and share and then ultimately consume those model files. If you're wanting to truly automate it, you might be better to talk within your project teams to see if you can live link to the work in progress models, so you can at least share information via Revizto with ease without necessarily needing to wait for people to carry out an action. You might still carry out that action for traceability and for contractual reasons, but to run this process in parallel can really speed things up. And the other thing there is to, just think about how you can keep it simple as part of that process. What the automation cycle might look like? Well, I tend to think of it as an automation cycle that runs around the outside of what the design or construction team might be doing. They're working away in their work in progress files, creating models, creating model elements. They're publishing, sharing those models as part of an ecosystem that lives within its own right. If you can tap into that and create the automation around the outside of that, you can then consume those models on a regular basis. Maybe it's every week, maybe it's every night, and then run the clash detection, issue tracking and reporting, and deliver that back to really foster a collaborative environment where model reviews and collaboration happens on real-time information. And that just frees up the project team to focus on those important issues. I spoke before about focusing the effort. Coordination zones is a key way of focusing that effort and really keeping people on track. I like to think of it as a divide and conquer. Coordination zones, you can think of them as 3D boxes or jelly zones, whatever kind of terminology you want to throw at them. But essentially, they're just a 3D extrusion that mimics the bulk form or shape of a zone within the building. The zones could be related to an entire component of a building. Maybe it's an entire existing office building. Maybe it's individual floor levels within a tower that is part of an overall campus development. Or it could be as finely grained as the in-ceiling coordination or a riser duct or plant room. Design your zones to suit your program. Name your zones appropriately so you can kind of find them when you're using them as part of your clash detection. Some common naming strategies for zones would be to name them based on building level or building name, or a combination of the two, and then maybe a descriptor about whether it's a riser or a plant room or a in-ceiling space that is being coordinated here. You can leverage all of that information as part of the clash and issue tracking processes within Revizto, and that can help you with identifying the hundreds or maybe thousands or even tens of thousands of clashes that might be identified in a large complex project. This is another good example of showing how you can split those zones down. Zones can be also used to determine whether an issue or a clash is identified as a low priority item or a high priority item. Again, it's very useful to group and utilize zones within the clash automation process within Revizto. It's kind of like the fundamental backbone to how you would set up the whole coordination process. Building on top of zones and going a level further and a wee bit deeper into this rabbit hole of coordination is the search sets. I've fallen in love with search sets years ago, way back when I first started using Navisworks. Navisworks introduced me to search sets. Revizto took that, I guess, concept of search sets and then leveled it up. The ability to create cascading search sets in Revizto just still blows my mind. They really are the brains behind the coordination and how you can access information inside Revizto. What do I mean by a cascading search set? Well, it's being able to grab the big stuff and then quickly and easily filter it to the small stuff. Maybe it's a door handle on a door inside a building, as an example. And to be able to repurpose that information quickly across multiple projects, or to be able to edit a high-level search set, so maybe the model file, and have all of that ripple through the categories and the properties and the coordination search sets. A good structure for the search sets is grab your models, grab your categories from Revit. You can substitute categories to IFC properties if you're working in an IFC environment, and then grab those elemental properties of the individual objects, and then layer those into creating the coordination sets. And I'm going to talk more about this as we go forward. Another takeaway from creating search sets this way is gives you the flexibility to tap into things like 5D estimating or potentially even 4D time-based programming, and absolutely for asset and facilities management and data capture down the line. And, you know, from my perspective, and having used cascading search sets for years, it just reduces that human error. You're able to change a top-level search set, have it just ripple all the way down to the low level. So by able to, with the ability to just change a handful of search sets, I can control several hundred search sets with ease. What does it look like? Well, the search sets tool in Revizto is like a list, and each search set has properties that you can define. I like to create them with this parent-child-grandchild approach. So the model search sets, they look for models, but they're looking for models at an elemental level. It's really important to grab them at an elemental level. You want to grab the elements. If you turn off the model, within Revizto, you also turn off the elements inside it. But if you select the elements at an elemental level based on the model they've come from, you're not actually interfering or turning off or on the model. So you're only turning off and on and the individual elements. And this gives you a lot of flexibility to cascade these search sets from category to properties to material types and be able to flip between them with ease and confidence that you've grabbed the right thing. So to grab the models, I always use element equals source file, and then I list or select the model files based on what's in the project itself. And there's an example there where all of the building services models or the elements in the building services models have been filtered and grabbed using that strategy. Categories, because fundamental to Revit is a building information database, and categories form that fundamental basis. It makes it a really easy go-to for building out any kind of search set strategy. These categories are common across the English versions of Revit. I do know that some of these category names change between version, and I do know that some of these category names change based on the language version of Revit. So you may need to check some of that stuff if you're working on multinational projects or projects where there might be different Revit versions at play. And when I mean versions, I don't mean file versions. I mean German version versus English version, etc. And you might need to adapt your search set strategy to allow for that bilingual approach. Another way of adapting to that could be using a more of an open BIM approach and using some IFC definers and descriptors in that space to actually link all of those things up, where the language component becomes a bit more agnostic. Here's an example of selecting pipework using the built-in Revit category, selecting pipe accessories, pipe fittings, and pipes. And I'm saying that that's my pipe work. And then I can isolate that and check that in the 3D window with a right click and know that I've got all of the pipe work and I've not got any artifacts that might be, mechanical plant or structural steel beams, etc. So I know what I'm grabbing. And then I can break that down a further step by diving into the properties within the categories themselves. Here's an example of diving into the pipework to find the fire protection pipework. And this is where the cascading search sets really come into their own. You can see in this example here that it's cascading the pipework search set. and the plumbing fixtures search set, and then it's looking for a condition for fire services based on those other search sets. So if I make any changes to my pipework search set or my plumbing fixtures search set, they will automatically cascade into this search set, and then this search set links back into my coordination search sets that I use for the clash detection. Here's an example of a coordination or clash test search set. This is another pipework example, and you can see that the pipework is coming in as a cascading search set. It's a drainage one, and it's also finding pipework that's less than 50 millimeters in diameter. So building up search sets and clash tests on this strategy, really it gives you that ability to, with a very few search sets, create hundreds of combinations of clash tests, and it gives you that ability to control those clash tests with confidence, so you don't have to spend a lot of time on quality control and quality assurance. When you're running your coordination tests, you can do that with confidence, and you know that you're excluding any kind of false positives on the way. And one of the tips that I like to do with these search sets that lead into the clash tests is I like to also exclude anything that you're not actually going to test. Things like insulation or any kind of model elements that you're not actually going to test, or if you're going to just mark them as a false positive, think about excluding them from the search set themselves. A big reason for that is it'll speed up the entire process. And it will make the clash detection process much more seamless. So now that we've kind of made a framework for testing the models and finding all of these issues, how can we communicate these issues with project teams without overwhelming them with large volumes of paper or PDFs with hundreds and hundreds of pages and small little screenshots of issues? Noting that Revizto is fully functional from your mobile phone these days with our phone app all the way through to your desktop. You have access to grab the individual issues at will at any time, anywhere, actually on the planet. So what can we do, and how can we actually highlight these issues at a macro level? And more importantly, how can we engage with stakeholders that are new to Revizto, or actually a bit timid or not familiar with the 3D environment? So one of the things I like to do in this space is lean into the stamp technology inside Revizto. I've loved stamps since they've come. I like their visual basis. You can color code the stamps to meet certain colors that are known within the industry around, maybe fire is red, hydraulics is blue, mechanical could be cyan, and structures could be pink, architecture could be black. And that gives you that kind of quick visual cue what this issue might be. And another thing I like to do with these stamps is I like to lean into the fact that they are actually visible in the 3D and 2D environments simultaneously. And what's neat about this 2D environment, or this heat map that you can create in that 2D environment, is if you export them as PDFs, those stamps and those issues are actually hyperlinkable, and you can start to engage people who might be a little bit timid around utilizing Revizto and tools that they're familiar with. You can send them a PDF, and if they want to see what the issue is, they just click on it and it'll open up Revizto if it's installed on their mobile phone or desktop. The stamps that are changing shape, eagle-eyed people out there will note on my screenshots that the icons for the stamps have changed shape recently. So the rectangles are a clash, and the pill is for the manually placed stamps. The pill's just kind of got softer edges to it. Again, the stamps can be used to drive and generate the project dashboards and the reporting that is generated from all of the issues that get created. So thinking about stamps as part of your fundamental backbone to your coordination strategy is highly recommended. Stamps also have some special features that they act as templates as well. I like the stamp templates because they give you a one point of reference that you can use for either a design discipline, a construction discipline, or you might want to break it down into individual things that they could relate to zones or other components as well. Stamps could be used for QR codes, for example, and you can then print them off and stick them on site and use that to scan with your the Revizto phone app to then hyperlink you back into the digital environment when you're on a construction site, useful for defecting or checking where the issues might be, or maybe recalling some asset information from a piece of plant and machinery. Using the stamp templates, we can quickly control the color, the issue priority, who it gets assigned to, any deadlines, watches, and whether it's a public issue or not. And it also include tags in there, whether an issue might be a false positive, or maybe it requires further design review. Something like running a clash test to find and discover where penetrations might need to go in concrete floors, and then tag it with a stamp. And then put a tag inside the stamp that says penetrations. And then you can run that as a report and have a conversation with a contractor around where they might undertake some core drilling, or whether they might do cast and penetrations as part of the construction process. It's very useful, especially since they show in both 2D and 3D. You can produce a floor plan where these things appear all automatically with our clash detection engine. Heat maps. I've found heat maps to be very useful. Heat maps can just run directly off top of floor plans. You can run them also over reflected ceiling plans. The beauty about turning on the pins and seeing the stamps in a heat map format is you can see where the congestion is for coordination in the context of a building footprint. Sometimes when you're looking at a big long list of issues, you just don't have any context where these things are. Yes, you can filter it based on zones and levels and grid locations and who these issues might be related to or who reported them. But that requires a level of skill and dedication to learn deeper parts of the platform. Sometimes it's easier to just look at a 2D floor plan and go, wow, there's 10 issues in that plant room. Maybe we'll have a coordination session on the plant room next week and we'll talk about these 10 issues. That ability to blend the 2D and 3D worlds in Revizto, I think, is one of our greatest unique selling points for the platform that just really enables everyone in the project to have insight about how the project is going and also interact with the project at their skill level, their way. You can customize the heat maps, and something I like to do with the heat maps is set them up in that federated model, and that way you can kind of set the view templates and the look and feel of the floor plans or the backgrounds to these heat maps to suit your own personal needs. And then as the models are uploaded on that regular basis, the heat maps will update automatically. So supercharging your coordination with some clash automation, where we look at the finer points of how the clash tests are made, and then I should still have time for Q&A. So clash tests, the clash tests are really quite simple to make with this strategy. You're really just selecting your clash tests search sets, and you're selecting which ones you want to clash against each other. It's important to think about and record the clash tests. Using a matrix is really useful, so you can easily find where clash tests are potentially doubling up. You don't want to clash test object A with object B, only to later in your clash test framework be clash testing the same object B with object A in reverse. So yeah, capturing it in a matrix format will show you where any duplication might be present, and you can cancel those out. That way you're refining your process and you're minimizing the amount of manual time reviewing the individual clashes that can be generated in these 3D models when using a clash detection engine. Another thing with working this way is it allows junior BIM staff, who are new to the industry to start to understand how complex buildings are, and then allowing them to break it down into meaningful small chunks that can really be managed, even by junior staff. And in this example here, there's about 20 search sets, and from those 20 search sets, a couple of hundred clash tests can be generated. So from the 20 things, 200 are automatically managed, and that's quite manageable even by really junior people within the BIM space. The clash automation in Revizto is where the true power of this whole process really kicks in. As you generate the clashes, being able to group them automatically without third-party software is really powerful. And to be able to group them by zone and level, mechanical system name, and then actually group all of that stuff together, so you can chain up all of the issues that have been found and create a logical analysis of a pipe run with steel beams, and know whether penetrations need to be made or whether the pipe needs to move, is where the true power of this process in Revizto kicks in and just saves oodles of time. Tip, you can create duplicate clash tests in Revizto, and you can set different priorities for those things as well. And that's quite useful when you start to think about issue automation and how complex you want to make your clash test strategy. On the issue automation front, it's really useful to be able to target two areas of coordination. In this example here, I've selected pipework. It's hydraulic pipework. I want to grade all of the pipework that's of a large diameter as a major issue if it's found in the clash rules, and then anything of a small diameter I want to be able to set as a minor issue. So I can use the clash automation and I can run a conditional value on that where any of the, if the clash group, the initial grouping, doesn't have any of the objects that are, say, less than 50 millimeters, I'm going to set that as a major item, and then all of the other issues are going to be minor. A really useful tip and way of using clash automation to minimize the amount of review work that people have to do on the coordination process. The clash issue automation allows you to define the stamps and the priorities, deadlines and assignees and watches. I think the two most useful two in that space is the priority and possibly the deadline, and then the tags that go with that. And you can mix and match those to create some unique circumstances. I'd like to encourage the engagement across all stakeholders within the Revizto environment. And one of the ways that I like to encourage that engagement is to create points of reference that are just like one click of a mouse. Show me the services model with firewalls. Show me the structures model, the fire model, the mechanical model, using appearance templates and linking back into those original search sets. And you can see in the example here that the model grids and the clash test for fire rated walls are used. So again, those cascading search sets, they feed right through the entire platform, all the way through to appearance templates, etc. Very powerful and useful to allow people, even on their mobile phone, to get to a view and apply an appearance template very quickly. And then the kind of the last point that I want to touch on is once you've kind of built all of that, how do you then quickly communicate that? And using our dashboard technology and our reporting technology, you're able to generate dashboards that just simplify a very complex situation. So you can look at a line diagram and see a bit of a history of what's been happening with the coordination. Maybe you want to see at a macro level all of the solved issues versus all of the open issues. So you can have a very positive conversation with your design or construction team. And more importantly, these things can be scheduled and automated so you can get a Monday morning update. And the beauty about that is nobody's been involved in that update over the weekend. The machines have done all the hard work, and they're going to email you Monday morning with an update, and then you can make some informed decisions on that. So really, you know, what does all of that mean? Well, a lot of business efficiency and savings potential with automating your traditional 3D coordination workflows with Revizto. And ultimately, that maybe means that, you know, Revizto is part of your project team going forwards, and it's there to augment and supercharge your projects. If you're struggling to find the human resources to meet your needs, maybe you can automate your workflows and augment your team with a digital team member. That brings me to the end, and I think I'm right on time. And I want to thank you all for joining in today. And if you want to contact me, there's my LinkedIn details, my email address. Feel free to reach out. I'm here to help.
Thanks a lot, Jason. It was very interesting, and we do have a little bit of time for some questions that came through today. So just if we don't have time to finish all the questions before the end of the webinar, we'll come back to everyone after the webinar offline. Okay, let's see. And apologies if I'm mispronouncing anybody's name. Rob is asking, are the Cascading search set filters available for the standard version or just Revizto Plus?
You can use them for the standard version, but that they work best if you you know, use them with Plus and you know, start that coordination workflow. The Clash engine is only available in Plus.
Thank you. Sam is asking, thanks, Jason, great prezzo. As a busy BIM manager, I love search sets too. They can be time consuming to build and maintain. Appreciate there often needs to be some project specific setup for this. But our
we'll be sharing, yeah, we'll be sharing what we've presented tonight as part of the update. So you can, Sam, you can take away what I've shown tonight if that works for you.
Okay, great. The Maximilian, okay, there's a question. No to detailed breakdown of search sets to exact model structure, macro breakdown with open bin IFC workflow with models from different software with different modeling quality. It only works if all models are 100% flawlessly designed, built, and attributed are 100% correctly assigned. No, is that?
That's a really good question. I haven't yet worked on 100% accurate, correctly assigned, clash-free model for a project. All projects have their nuances, and what I've presented tonight is actually come from the field and has been designed to really allow for the ease and management of a nuanced environment where people name things differently, building things on the Revit categories approach is one way of managing that. And you can do a similar thing with the IFC workflows. The Revit categories map through to IFC categories, and you can use that. So I try to avoid hooking into family names or family types where possible, and use things like geometry things, dimensions, system classifications, other things that are much more fundamental to get the granularity I need.
Thank you, Jason. Right. Did you use a secondary software to create your categories elements, such as the deep space?
No, but you could do. The beauty about using categories is once you've made them, they're set, and then you just need to maintain them as Autodesk might change them. I'm aware in 2024 that they've added a couple of new categories. So as you keep a library of these things, just remember to keep it maintained going forward. Autodesk is very good at updating its kind of, I guess, help documentation around changes to categories. And there's some really good platforms out there for that.
All right, so let's see.
Ian McKinnon raises a question around abutting elements, and is there any way to remove the clashes or minimize the volume based on poor modeling? The most common area for this that I've experienced to date is in building services, things like fittings and fixtures. So it's the pipe bend, it's the pipe T. It's not actually clashing, it's the pipe connecting with the pipe bend or the pipe T. If you use the grouping by system name or system type, you can actually group all of that together and actually minimize the issue reporting of those things. It'll still generate a clash at that intersection, but you group them all together. So it is actually reasonably easy to group up, 50 or 500 of these issues in a single pipe run and see all the bends and T's and elbows as part of that system.
I have a question from Merdad. I would like to know how much time we need to implement Revizto coordination in our internal office. Which criteria need to be implemented in the first place?
I'd love to actually come meet with you and create an implementation plan that's designed around your bespoke needs. I think that would probably be the first starting point, and we have a huge team of customer success professionals that have all come from the industry that are available to assist and help. So please email me or contact one of our customer success representatives in your region.
We have a question from Ben May. Any smart tips, tricks to identify vertical pipe work automatically for lower priority over horizontal within Revizto?
That's a really good question. It's a bit of work in progress. There is some workarounds that you can do with the angle or the slope, but it's not hard and fast. There's a bit of, I guess, fuzzy logic is probably the term I would use to get it to help with closing out some of those things. What I tend to do is not clash floors as part of, say, a structural set. That minimizes it, because that kind of environment tends to flag up with walls and floors more often than it does with, say, beams. There could be beams, but you don't want a vertical pipe running through a beam anyway.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one or two more. Let's see.
Roland asked a nice question. How to automate the clash test without manually executing it in the first place. probably speaking out of turn, but we're always constantly innovating and thinking of the future and how we can automate more workflows. So some of the developments that you'll see coming over the next few months is definitely in this area. We've had a lot of customers reach out saying, now that we've got this amazing clash automation engine, can we just run it overnight so I don't have to be there when we're actually running that? So watch this space, email me if you want further details.
Thank you, Jason. Would you like to answer maybe one more?
Will's one is an easy one. Will, any surprises coming with Revit 2024? Lots of surprises coming. Reach out to the myself or the customer success team, and we can kind of talk you through what we're thinking about and our vision for the future. We're desperately thinking up new ways to reduce the workload on BIM managers, BIM professionals, and the industry at large. We want to leverage more of the platform on mobile devices, so it is worthwhile reaching out to us. And Sam Henderson with 200 clash tests. Yeah, absolutely. The reason for having multiple clash tests is to not be manually reviewing them and have the confidence that you're sending the right issues to the issue tracker with the right priorities. So you're only flagging the high priority items that need to be addressed by the modeling teams. And any low priority things can be left in a watch bucket. So you can watch them to see if they're closing out as the big issues get closed out. What I've noticed is as people focus on the big issues and close them out, all of the little stuff that you might have flagged closes out automatically anyway. The zones, Niall, if I said your name right, apologies if I didn't. To apply zones within Revizto, you model them in your model authoring software, and then you create a search set to find and apply them in Revizto, and you edit and set the search set for that under the project properties. If you want some help on that, again, reach out to me or our customer success team. We'll show you how to do that.
We have a question. Sorry, you go.
You go.
Can you automate the uploading of your Revit model to Revizto from Roland?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't do it any other way. In my previous role, we had multiple machines uploading hundreds of models to Revizto automatically every night, every day, to support our project teams. Use the export scheduler tool. It can be a little bit tricky to get your head around it for the first time. Again, reach out to me, reach out to our customer success team. We'll show you how to do it. It liberates your life. Not having to worry about have the models been uploaded or not is such a game changer.
All right, we're getting close. Let's do one more. And then
you pick it.
Wrap it up. All right. Let's do Graziano. Would it be possible to implement a folder for clash detection? As the number of clashes increase, it becomes quite messy, and having a folder would greatly aid in organizing them.
Great request. I will put that on my user request list that I'm managing with our customer success team and development team. I'm pretty sure it's been asked once before, but you're absolutely right.
All right.
And one last one to Rob. Yes, there is big plans for the export scheduler. We'll be sending out updates. We'll be doing webinars on that when that's released. There are some big changes coming, and what I've seen from the inside is blowing my mind. And I love the old scheduler. The new one is going to be awesome.
Okay, since you are so fast and efficient with questions, let's do one more. We have a couple of minutes. Can I select a clash from the 3D navigation prior to creating the issue?
Yes. Yes, so in the clash automation window, you can view all of the individual clashes before publishing them to the issue tracker. It's personal preference whether you want to publish everything to the issue tracker. At this point in time, I've always favored publishing them to the issue tracker so you have a history of what was clashed and what classification that was given. And that helps with onboarding contractors and showcasing to your client or project manager that you've run a thorough coordination process. What I've seen in currently in the issue automation space, if you go and review a lot of those things, it's almost as if they never happened. So I prefer to put them into the issue tracker so you've got a record. In future releases of Revizto, there may be ways, particularly through the API, of being able to track those things actually being closed out in the issue automation window before they become real issues.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. We'll get back to everyone offline. Please reach out to Jason or, as he said, to the team if you have any other questions, any other requests. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone attending from whenever you are. We had a very diverse attendees today, and we had a lot of questions on the recording. Yes, it's recorded and it will be sent to everyone after the webinar. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. Keep an eye for next updates from Revizto and our next webinars. And have a great day and night. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you all. See you soon.
Bye.